Welcome to Cinemophile, where we bring you the best in independent, documentary, and foreign films, and we talk to the people who made them. I'm your host, Mike Caspar, and you can find out more about the program by going to cinemophilepod.com. When an Alabama court jeopardizes access to IVF and her own embryos, artist Abbey Crain refuses to surrender her creative power. In this triumphant tour de force, Crain and a group of fertility patients reckon with the threats to their family future, unearthing hope from an unsettled legal landscape. This is a very powerful film. It's called Show Me the Line. I think that sums it up beautifully in a way that draws you in, but it's also really what this film is about. Where is the line, and what are we doing with people's health and their families and their civil rights? That's another part of this film. What do women have control over, if not their own body? We're joined today by the director, one of the co-directors of this wonderful film, Kelsey Ianuzzi, as well as not joining us today, darn it, was producer Stacey Davis. I want to give her credit for her work on this. Kelsey, welcome to Cinemophile.
Thanks so much for having me, Mike. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. And I was so taken by this documentary film for a lot of reasons. First of all, it is something that, as we are speaking today, is to say contentious, not across the country. This is really the front line of the battle of women to be able to control their own reproductive rights and autonomy over their body. This is right there at the edge of the law and of the politics and many, many other levels of this. Tell me a little bit, Kelsey, about what prompted you to move forward with Show Me the Line.
Show Me the Line is a film that showed up at my doorstep, I would say. It hit really close to home in a way that I felt making the film was the only thing I could do. 2 years ago, the courts in Alabama interfered with access to IVF, in vitro fertilization, and it directly impacted my friend, Abbey Crain, who I had been watching go through fertility treatment for the last 5 years, like leading up to that moment. At that time, she still had not successfully been able to have a child. And I am a product of reproductive assistance and IVF. And that's something that I've always kind of grown up knowing was a part of my family's story. And so it just felt really personal and close to home. And Abby had spent several years covering women's issues in our home state of Alabama as she was going through this. And I just saw, how entangled those things were for her, how much it took out of her to go through the treatment, and just how much strength was sort of required to go through this whole process. So it was really unfathomable to me that there could be like a bureaucratic interruption to that. And yeah, I mean, thousands of families were impacted. And so I knew that the national news and international news were covering an aspect of the story, but I knew that they were missing something that she and I together had access to, which was like the personal lived experience of women in the state. And BBC could come and do their interviews, but then they'd be gone in a couple of weeks. And meanwhile, like the four women that are featured in Show Me the Line have to carry on and live with the consequences of these decisions. So I wanted to know what that would look like and be able to show that.
So just to recap, the decision by the Alabama Supreme Court landed in
February 2024.
2024. So
Yeah.
in an election year, which obviously would bring a little more baggage to all of the different machinations that would be going on. So it lands in 2024. When did you know you wanted to document, when did the cameras start rolling in terms of making this film?
Literally, like the night that Abby found out her clinic was shutting down and nobody had any answers, I couldn't sleep. And I'm sure she also was, tossing and turning. But the next day, I remember reaching out to her and just saying, like, look, I don't know what this could be, but I know that we are right here and would you let me start recording? Can we do an interview? So pretty much immediately
Mhm.
we started something. The film evolved over the course of that year. We wanted to bring in more voices and show other sides of the experience. And we also knew, I mean, at that time, I knew there was just so much I didn't know about how it would be resolved, what would happen next, and just had that instinct of like, well, let's see where it goes.
Yeah, and that decision, when it came down, just as you described, it threw these clinics into a legal kind of gray area, kind of the turmoil that it created. And the
Yeah.
term I was looking for was prenatal motherhood status,
Mm,
right? This is so there's it's without getting into all the legalese of it, it essentially caused all of these fertility clinics to say, wait a minute, we don't want to do anything because it is ascribing personhood
hmm.
to to embryos. Or
Yes. So what happened with the Supreme Court case is there was a clinic that had mishandled embryos, and families were suing the clinic for the loss of their mishandled embryos, which they're entitled to do that. What the court decided was that it wasn't a loss of property or anything like that. It was a wrongful death of a minor, which opened up this can of worms of like, is it child trafficking to transport embryos between clinics across state lines? Could patients be held liable for a loss through IVF? A lot of unresolved and very consequential legal questions and liabilities that the clinics in the state just immediately were like, wait, we
yeah,
need to figure out what we can do. And they didn't reopen until the legislature intervened. There were a lot of women and families who advocated immediately, and a temporary measure was
there
passed
you go.
in the state that said, okay, we know we do want clinics to open, and we're going to say in this law that the legislature is passing that the clinics can't be held liable. And so the clinics have since reopened. It gave them enough comfort to do that. But legal experts have said that in Alabama, it's still not full protection. Like these two things are actually legally in conflict with one another. And
Yeah.
so the second it gets challenged, it could all disappear again without full and permanent protection. And the
Right.
legislature, when the law was signed shortly after, the governor says, like, this is temporary. We want to revisit this. They haven't necessarily put any other protections into place or revisited that particular law. That's still the measure that clinics are operating under today.
Right. And what I think all of that does is it points out in many different directions just how far are the people who are opposed to in vitro fertilization, abortion, all these, how far are they willing to go, right? Because this idea of that life begins at conception is fraught. And that's kind of that's sort of the end point, and it depends on which side of that issue you're on, is it's so determinant to the lives of the women we see in this film, but also women everywhere in America. I think because in vitro had been around for a while, it was kind of mainstream in America.
Mm-hmm.
It was shocking to a lot of people who never expected that to have an impact on their life.
Yes.
Their option to do this is now suddenly under attack. And I know
Mm-hmm.
that it was a big flashing red light for a lot of people across the country at
Yes.
that time.
Yeah, and 1 in 6 people suffer from infertility. That's a lot of that's like the average room that you walk into anywhere at a social event. That's
Yeah.
a lot of people are impacted by this, not just women, of course, and but we did feel like that's where we wanted to orient the lens um, as a team was what's the real impact on real people? What's the story between those headlines? Let's take a look at that and let's be with them. And that opens up anybody's perspective because we believe stories can help us reconcile paradox and
And that is the beauty of this
Yeah.
film. It is absolutely one of the things that really pushes all of the things you mentioned. And thank you for indulging me in the sort of legalistic side of this. But I think it's important for people to understand this is real world stuff. This is the kind of
Mhm.
thing that has impacts that are unforeseen and certainly unwelcome for so many people. But where this film really shines, and it in many different ways it does, Show Me the Line is the name of the film, is focusing on these four remarkable subjects. There are others. I'd actually include Michelle Browder in terms of sort of the people that we spend time with, but Veronica, Emily, Jamie, and Abbey Crain. Abbey is amazing. She is not only a wife, a journalist, an advocate, an artist, and an IVF recipient. And through her art, through her advocacy, through her journalism, she affords us these windows into these different worlds, these different aspects of this. She is a fantastic avatar for all of us in this film.
That's great to hear. I mean, yeah, I feel the same way. I love all the women that we worked with were just absolutely incredible,
Mhm.
and they are the driving force behind the film because I mean, it's hard to make a documentary, it's hard to make a film, period. What I just kept coming back to when things were feeling challenging and when I was not sure like how we were going to get to the finish line of this project, thinking about them and wanting to make something that lived up to how incredible they all are. And I think that really shines in the final product of the film is that love and admiration for all of them.
Yeah. And in these people in the film, they are a spectrum of people. When we see the struggle, the hardship, the physical and psychological hardship that if you want to go through in vitro, it is not a walk in the park. It is a very difficult process. And not only on a physical level, but as we see in the film, psychological,
Hmm.
metaphysical, existential levels that you really are introducing into someone's life when they make this decision. And that's the thing I love about the film is it gives that weight. We see it manifest itself in the very real stories, Veronica, Emily, Jamie, how that plays out. And this has to do with body image. It has to do with how they see themselves in the world, whether it be family or society. There's so many ways in which these women illuminate the challenges of being a woman in a
Hmm.
world that is often hostile.
So you're picking up what we hoped people would get out of the film. I mean, there's so much that I think going through IVF sort of highlights and pours salt on some wounds that are just a part of the everyday womanly experience. But I think they showcase their strength so beautifully and also show, there are people, there's some quotes in the film like Jamie says, "Oh, I had some guy tell me he thought IVF was just a pill you take and
That's right.
it works or whatever." And it's like, no, it's so much more involved than that. And it doesn't always work. And there's, loss. I think we also hoped that the film would speak to people who are dealing with grief of any kind, but
Mhm.
particularly grief around their bodies or pregnancy loss, which we know is an issue that affects women all over the world. And
Well, even just the bare bones of how IVF works.
yeah.
Even at the level, I think the legislators, or there was somebody fairly high up in the should have known, don't even really quite understand how it works that way, which
Hmm.
you wonder about the people who are making the decision at the judicial level. Like, are they just kind of, what do they
Yeah.
actually understand in all of this?
Well, there was so much that I, as a filmmaker, learned about IVF and reproductive health care and my own reproductive system through the
Yeah.
process of making the film. But I was watching in real time as Abby, as Emily, were also learning things that they didn't even know could happen. And for so many women who go through fertility treatment, I think that's the case because there's just not a ton of dialogue about it in public spaces, and then I don't know. We just don't talk enough about it. And that was one of the things that we felt like we really needed to include in the film was, some some door opening to having those conversations, but just the amount that we learned through the process was revealing of how much ignorance there can be about it. And these women who have to become experts in their own bodies are still learning new things. So it kind of calls into question like people who don't really understand that process, should they be determining things for people who do have to go through it? I don't know. I mean, I think that
Yeah,
that's
exactly
a
right.
question that the film wants to ask.
Well, and yes, and one of the other things about this film that show me the line, and that is the artwork, that presentation, that exhibition. What are we calling it in the film?
We during the production we called it the convening because we were like they're all going to convene at this at
Right.
this exhibition, but it was really like an art installation
Art
that she put up.
installation. That's the word I was
Yeah.
looking for. And all of these women, in some way or another, have painted I'll call it a self-portrait, a portrait that is relevant to them and their experience. And to see that and to have Abby is this kind of continuing to kind of give us background, talk about the body shame, all the kind of things that these women are dealing with. And at one point, she's talking about the area between the belly button and the vulva, I believe. And she goes, "There's a
The belly
lot
button.
going on
Yeah.
here." And I love the
Yeah.
way because it's easy to understand. This is something that, I'm a guy. I'm a man. I never, none of this was ever explained to me ever, and it's been
Yeah.
as an adult that I've learned anything at all. And so and even in the history of medicine into the 20th century, the mystery of women and
Hmm.
menstruation and all these things, it's ridiculous how little and how far behind we are on the science of a woman's body. And this
Hmm.
just continues to manifest itself in ways that women are underserved medically. And all these things are in the film. They're all part of this mosaic of what we're watching in this film. And I just, again, I'll come back to this. It's done in such a way, it's so low key. The film is so low key that it's like, these are serious issues, but you're like, I can't wait to see more of this. And I mean, I cannot express to you just how well I think you did this. Like I said, I'm a guy. These are things
Thanks.
that you're not
I
used to dealing with or hearing about, and all of and again, it's the tone, it's the way it's shot, everything. I'm kind of mushy here about it, but I really,
wow.
yeah, I really appreciate. And that gives me an opportunity to talk about Michelle Browder because
Hmm.
this is the part of the film that really, you're following the lives of these four women, and then you get to somebody who knows history and knows what happened. And back in the slave days, these women were used to breed, and what they were put to, they were tortured, they were medically butchered during this period of
Hmm.
time. And you get someone who understands what was going on. That's another part of this film. I want to talk about
Yeah.
Michelle because I really appreciated her input in this film.
She's amazing. Michelle Browder, for those listening, is an artist who is the creator of the Mothers of Gynecology Monument in Montgomery, Alabama. And the monument is a massive, beautiful sculpture to the three mothers of gynecology who were women that were enslaved and experimented on and tortured by Dr. J. Marion Sims, who is credited widely around the world as the father of gynecology. He made breakthroughs in the field of gynecology by abusing these women. And so her monument makes sure that we remember them. And it just felt like a very important part of this whole story to think about what the history really is and who are we platforming and who are we erasing in these
Exactly.
conversations around health.
And one of the things we see in the film are the steps. So I wrote them down. These six different steps that women go through just for one round of in vitro fertilization, and watching them and their partners go through it with them and try to sort of be there for them. It's painful. It's difficult. It is, and again, psychologically taxing. And
Hmm.
I mean, I'd be remiss if I didn't. Yeah, Emily. I mean, Emily is this woman who, I mean, you really see how she reacts and how well it's important to all of these women. But
Well, and I'll say about the steps, we actually had a lot of back and forth in posts about where to begin with that. I mean, there's a lot of coverage in the film. Obviously, we were trying to do so much,
you were
um, and we didn't want the medical context to be lost, but we also wanted to make room for all these stories. And finding that balance was something we spent a lot of time on. And the steps was a little bit tricky because technically there's many steps before you even get to that point. There's usually steps before you ever get to the in vitro fertilization part because it's a higher intervention for fertility treatment. And so many of the women that by the time they start IVF have already gone through many more steps.
Mhm.
And we didn't want to erase that, but we also were like, well, we just kind of need to focus on, let's give the broad strokes. We don't want to
Right.
get in the weeds.
Right.
We don't want to glaze over. It's relentless. I mean, there's an insane amount that is involved in the process of fertility treatment. And I didn't want to lose too much of that relentlessness because I felt like it was important to share with the audience some of the exhaustion and the whiplash
Yeah.
that these women are going through so that the other people could get a taste of it.
And then on layered on top of that, if you live in Alabama, you are what's described as a band-aid
Mm,
over this opportunity that you think you want to
hmm.
use, and you may or
Yeah.
may not find yourself in court. I've interviewed filmmakers of documentary films where they're prosecuting women for, as I said, body autonomy, control over their own
Hmm.
bodies. So it's
Yeah.
not as if it couldn't happen. And sorry to say, Alabama is probably one of the first places you would think about is, although it happens everywhere around the country, and not trying to sing out
I
Alabama, but this is a big step. This was a jolt to the system, this
This
particular
is a
ruling.
tool to the system. And what Abby always wants to remind people is that it's not necessarily confined to state lines. Like
Yeah,
it can be, there are other states that cheat off of Alabama's legislative homework. So if
yeah,
you think that it might not affect you, you have to, this calls into question whether it can. And there are other states. And as we see that nothing, Jatan in the film says, when they come for access, they come for all of it. And
that's
I
it.
think that
That's right.
there's something to be said about that because these issues are all kind of entangled with one another. You can't just isolate one aspect of somebody's access to healthcare and their bodily autonomy and not have ripple effects in other places, even the ones that you might not think.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for quoting that because that is, they come for your access. They're coming for everything, really. And there's a lot more to come if we're not careful. So I want people not walk but run to see Show Me the Line. And I want to just real quick, are you screening anywhere soon? Are you in the festival run? Where are you at?
I'm in Bentonville, Arkansas.
Oh,
It's the week of our premiere on
yeah,
Saturday. And
yeah,
so we premiere Saturday. We have a screening coming up afterwards at Sidewalk Film Festival in Birmingham, Alabama. That'll be in August.
really?
And we hope more come through. We're submitted to several other festivals. And so we're
Okay.
really just at the beginning of our festival journey. And then we'd like to make the film as widely as available as we can. We don't have distribution at this time, but are hoping obviously to get as many people to see the film as possible.
Right. And I know Stacey Davis has a wide background in films and as on the legal side, but also as executive producer. Sort of Trust. Wow. I had no idea. I saw that Lynn Shelton's film,
Hmm.
which I loved and
Yeah,
fantastic. She was the AP on that. And
that was filmed in Birmingham.
was it really? Oh, wow.
Hmm.
Oh, great
Yeah.
film. Lynn Shelton's last film, I believe, because yeah, she was amazing. But well, Kelsey Ianuzzi, I want to thank you so very much for this remarkable film called Show Me the Line. As you mentioned, it's in its festival run. I am certain it will find a distributor. It's just too good of a film not to. Again, I want to thank you for your time and for your work here on Show Me the Line. Our guest today, director and producer, Kelsey Ianuzzi. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Nice meeting you too.
You have been listening to Cinemaphile with Mike Kaspar, the place where you will hear from the best in independent documentary and foreign filmmakers. Please check out our previous interviews as well as upcoming interviews and special programming by going to cinemaphilepod.com. We are also available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, searchable under Cinemaphile with Mike Kaspar. Until next time, thank you for listening.